always forget to do that. But without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Tam. And Tam, before jumping into the presentation and then the Q&A, maybe just give a quick background on who you are and why you're the best person to solve this loneliness epidemic we're currently experiencing.
Absolutely. Thanks for the introduction, Cassie. Yes, hello. As many of you will know, my name's Tam and I'm the founder of Foura. I've spoken to a lot of you before, but when I did that, I had a little bit more facial hair. I have shaved it all off in the name of Movember. It's something that I've been doing for 15 years, so I'm still getting used to my face. I can only imagine how you guys feel having seen me with a beard for the longest time. Anyway, I think in terms of kind of the reason why I started Foura was when I moved to Sydney about 8 years ago from London. I didn't really have a plan on moving here. I knew a handful of people, but found myself kind of thinking, who am I going to hang out with? Like, who am I going to explore this new city with? Who am I going to do the things that I enjoy, like watching sports or going to gigs with? And there really wasn't any great solution out there for finding friends. It's something that I've been passionate about for the longest time. For 11 years, I've been hosting a monthly social club where I basically pick a different pub on the third Thursday of every month, invite people that I know and encourage them to bring people that they know. And the idea behind it is just 1 month in the calendar where you can go out and meet people, or you can catch up with your existing friends. So the idea is you get to see an old friend and get to meet a new friend at the same time. It's something I've been doing for 11 years and something I've been passionate about. It's my favorite day of the month. And so this was a natural fit for me. In fact, when I told a bunch of mates that I was starting a business that did this, they all just went, yeah, that makes sense. And a lot of them actually ended up becoming investors when the opportunity came along for them. But in terms of the reason why it exists on a more kind of broader scale, it's something that Cassie's alluded to, which is that loneliness is rife. There was a report out, a State of the Nation report earlier this year, which showed that 1 in 3 Australians feel lonely and 1 in 6 suffer from extreme loneliness. Now, that was across a broad range of demographics, different ages, whether people were single or in relationships, had families or not. There's been a real growth in loneliness, and it's not just an Australian problem, but we are here, and that's where we started. I think Time Out released a report last year as well, saying that Sydney is the 3rd worst place in the world for making friends, and one of the least friendliest cities in the world. And that's a problem. Loneliness has an impact on our health. Ultimately, it's people who suffer from loneliness are 4.6 times more likely to suffer from depression and 4.1 times more likely to suffer from social anxiety. But it's a physical impact as well. Studies have shown that if you have strong social ties, you're more likely to live longer. In fact, it's on par. Sorry, it's good for you, twice as good for you as regular exercise, or on par with quitting smoking. That's the power that loneliness can have. But it's also just a happiness element as well. We think about it in terms of health, and that is definitely important. But I just think the world is better with friends, and that's why we're trying to build a friendlier world. In terms of the kind of size of the opportunity, how many people could suffer from this problem, yes, okay, 1 in 3 Australians feel lonely, but we've identified from the 9,000 members who have signed up to the service already 4 key kind of potential users. Expats like myself, who move around to different cities, whether that's from the UK to Australia, the US to Australia, or even from Sydney to Melbourne, or Melbourne to Sydney, or Tamworth to Sydney. When you find yourself in a new city, you need a new social group because you haven't had a lifetime of building that up. There's another group that we call young and fun, or young socials, mainly kind of people in their 30s whose friends are starting to settle down, have kids, partner up, move to the suburbs, and you're still friends, you just don't get to see them as often, but you still want to go out and do things. Who are you going to do them with? That's where we find a lot of the people who sign up for from as well. Divorcees and people who've gone through a long-term breakup often find themselves losing half their social circle in the breakup and are looking for other ways to build that up. And then we found a surprising one for me is that maybe about 20% of our members are empty nesters, people who are in the older demographic, kind of 50, 60 plus, whose kids have grown up and they have flown the nest and living their own lives. And now the parents have just got time on their hands and they're looking for people to spend that time with. So we believe that there's a really big market, a really big opportunity to help a lot of people and ultimately to generate revenue. In terms of how Foura works, for some of those of you who maybe haven't used the platform yet, I know a lot of you, including Cassie, have, but we try to make it fun and easy to make friends. So essentially, when you sign up, you complete a short survey that covers your hobbies, your interests, experiences, and your values. And we've got an algorithm that groups you into pods of 4. Why 4? Because it's awkward to make friends one-on-one. So having 4 people feels like the right number. It's not so intimate that it's awkward, but intimate enough that you still get to know everybody who's in the group. Once you've been matched and you all agree to meet, you then arrange a time and place to meet without chatting in the app. Now, this was something that was really important for me because I've used dating apps and I hate them. And the reason why a lot of people hate them is you end up spending more time chatting than you do dating, which for me is really, really flawed. You know, I think coming out of the pandemic, we saw how easy it is to stay connected through digital means. But what we really missed was spending time with each other face to face. You know, I got sick and tired of holding up a beer glass and cheersing a camera. I wanted to hold one up in the pub and cheers my friends in person and feel that kind of connection. So that's how Foura works. The question that we always get asked is, how do you actually make any money? Well, we partner with the venues that our members meet in, and they pay us a commission for bringing people in. We've also recently started partnering with more activity-based venues. So, for example, there's a place called Ballers Clubhouse down in Melbourne that do kind of shuffleboard and darts and a bunch of other kind of games that you can play together. And we've just about signed a deal with a nationwide bowling franchise. So the idea being that if you want to meet for a coffee or for a beer, you're more than welcome to. But if you want to do something that has an experience or some kind of activity behind it, you can do that as well. And in the same way, we take a commission off the back of that. Now, while these are the only 2 ways that we make revenue right now, they're certainly not the only 2 ways we plan on making money. One of the things we want to use the investment for is to build out new revenue streams. Much like the dating apps, we think there's an opportunity for a premium membership. So Foura will always be free for our members for as long as I can make that be the case. But we believe that the people would be willing to pay a little bit more for a few additional extra features, much like Tinder or Bumble did in the early days. Now, the idea is that when we're up to about 5,000 monthly active users in a city, we can introduce a premium membership. Until then, there's kind of not any point in the premium features that we're planning. But we've proven that that this will work by collecting tips. Some of you will have been on Foura for a while and will remember when we were asking if you'd be willing to leave a tip after your experience. And we found that 20% of our members were willing to leave a $10 tip. Now, to put that in perspective, Bumble and Tinder only have, I think, about 15% of their members paying for the service. So we really think that we're onto something there because that's for us providing the service as it is without any additional kind of features or benefits. The other thing that we want to do is partner to work with events. So you can imagine if we've got 4 people, the easy comparison I always make is imagine we've got 4 guys who meet up and all love watching rugby, for example. If we know that they've had a good time, then we can entice them to come back and buy tickets to a rugby game through Foura as a way for them to continue their friendship. See, that's really important. I think some people think of Foura as a way to meet people, and I don't. It really does come back to me as a way of helping you make friends. Now, in order to make friends, you can't just meet once and then that's it. Not many people are that friendly. You know, there's been research that shows if you spend about 40 hours with a person, they're an acquaintance. If you spend 80 to 100, then you consider them a friend. And if you spend 200 hours together, they're a good close friend. We want to help as many people as possible get to that 200-hour mark. And in order to do that, we need to partner with events, with activities, and provide you with ways to meet up for a second or a third or a fourth or fifth, sixth, however many times it is, in order to really solidify your friendship. But it also provides us with an additional revenue opportunity. Now, we've been up and running for 2 years, pretty much, just kind of coming out of one of the lockdowns in COVID a couple of years ago. And in that time, we've had some really amazing progress. You know, I've attracted more than 9,000 members and hosted 6,500 people in our pods. Now, in terms of the return rate, 97% of our users say that they would like to sign up, or not would like to, 97% of our users sign up to get another pod, whether it be in a couple of weeks, a couple of months, or even longer. There's some people who have used the platform as many as 20, 25 times in the last couple of years. Obviously, they're the kind of outliers, but there is a whole range of people who've gone from 1 all the way through to that 25 mark. We've captured the attention of the media completely by accident, I've got to say. We're contacted by a journalist at the Sydney Morning Herald who saw what we were doing and wanted to write a piece about us. I think that was late last year. And then early this year, we were contacted by the Age newspaper, who also wanted to do something about our expansion into Melbourne. We've been on ABC Radio twice. And I think it really just shows that there's people can really relate to the problem that we're solving. And, a lot of people believe that they would like more friends and don't really know where to turn to. And that's ultimately where Foura comes in. We've had some fantastic testimonials. To be honest, hearing from our members about how they found Foura to be is the best part of my job. If you check out the page on OnMarket, you'll be able to see some really heartwarming stories. But there's a quote here from Kirsty, who had met Alicia and Lara on one of our first Fouras, and they ended up planning a trip to Bali together. And there's been a lot of fascinating stories of people doing things. I've only heard a fraction of them, unfortunately. I love hearing them. So if you've got one, please do send it my way. One of the questions that we received a lot when it came to opening up this crowdfunding campaign was, how are we going to use the investment? Well, there's kind of two main priorities that we have. One is to hire more developers. We've built an app, but we know that the app can be better, and there's a lot of features that we want to build. A lot of them have been suggested by you guys, and a lot are just ideas that we've had from the beginning. So the idea is, depending on how much money we raise, and we'll talk about that in a little while, we aim to hire 1 to 3 developers who will build out new features, build out the revenue streams that we talked about, including the premium subscription and the events and experiences. But we can start to use machine learning and AI to improve the matching algorithm as well. We're collecting a lot of information about what people like and dislike. We're now collecting information about who you like and dislike meeting. And then we can use that to create better matches and to ultimately give you a better experience. In order to scale, we need to be able to find a way to acquire lots more venues in a quick and easy manner. And so we're going to need to build a platform for venues to be able to sign up and manage themselves. If you kind of think about it almost like Uber Eats, where they have restaurants signing up, that's what we need to be doing. The 9,000 members we've acquired so far, we have spent very little money getting there. And so we want to be able to start putting some money behind our marketing and some PR in order to acquire members, not just in Sydney and Melbourne, but to expand across the country into all the other capital cities at the very least, and then start looking at more regional towns and areas. If we raise a decent amount of money, more than $500,000, I'll probably also be looking at hiring a sales or a partnerships person who can come in and start to manage the venue side of things. Until then, that's going to be just me, and I'm happy to do it. But if we do raise enough, then we can hire somebody to do that, so that I can focus on some of the more other kind of important aspects of the business. Lastly, I just want to talk a little bit about the raise itself and our goals for what we want to achieve with the money. We are raising a seed round, what's known as a seed round in the startup world, for those of you who are familiar with the terminology. The minimum we'll be raising with this crowdfunding campaign is $150,000, and we're capping it at $750,000. Now, like I said, I want to achieve at least 500,000, but I'd be stoked if we can get to 750. We're valuing the business at $5 million, and so that will help determine the percentage equity you will receive in return for your investment. You can put in as little as $250, or I don't know if there is a maximum, Cassie, but I know a couple of people have expressed, as much as putting in $150,000 themselves.
Yeah, the only maximum there is for retail investors, $10,000. But if you'd like to put in more than that, you need to be a sophisticated investor. And if that's the case, just reach out to OnMarket and we can give you a hand in determining whether or not you're able to put that amount in.
Thanks. The goals we've got listed here are for the next 12 months. Where I'd love to see us get to is that we've got 1,000 pods a week meeting up across all the Australian capital cities, if not more. We'll have our subscription model launched. We've built the venue management platform so that they can sign up easily, and we'll be doing events and partnerships along that kind of line as well. That's something that we already tested out. Some of you may remember a few weeks ago, we sent an email about partnering with YCK Laneways about an event that they had on. I think we got a half decent response to that. But I think if we partner with them more, we can build more of the integration in so that it's actually promoted within the Foura app and not just as an email. We'll see a lot better results from that too. So that about covers the questions that we had kind of prepared for, but we have got time to answer some of your own questions. I don't know if any have come in yet, Cassie, or if there's anything that anybody wants to ask. Now would be the time.
Yeah, definitely. We have had a few come in. The other thing is, as you would have seen, we've been advertising for this investor Q&A, and we've actually had a few come in from investors who weren't able to be here. So we'll be answering those and then share around a recording with everyone as well. So please do feel free to send your questions in the chat. We'll get to them now, as well as if you're in a position to put your hand up, and you're more than welcome to speak. So the first one that we've actually gotten is one that was already asked as well. It's a question around any other companies that are operating in the space, or any of your competitors, such as Meetup, Meet Me, Wink, Nextdoor, etc. The question is, how do you differentiate from those competitors? How do you think that you'll get signups, and then as well as that, make it profitable, make Foura profitable?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the way I see it is that there are three main competitors, really. One of them mentioned Meetup. The other one is Bumble BFF, or a dating app that have spun off a friend finding feature. And then the other is kind of social clubs and book clubs and sports clubs and that kind of thing. I think we're very different from all of those in very different ways. You know, if you take Bumble, for example, that's probably the most famous one that people compare us to. It's still, in its essence, a dating app. You know, it's still just two people trying to decide whether they want to meet each other based on photos, and then chatting in an app, which everybody tells me they hate. Everyone I know who uses dating apps says that they hate the idea of them, and you know, it's a means to an end, but it's not an enjoyable experience for most. I think particularly when it comes to friendship, you know, meeting one-on-one is hard and it's awkward. You know, if you were to think about it, like, how many times would you go up to another person, another grown up, and say, hey, would you like to be my friend? Like, that is a really weird thing to say, and it's a really weird thing to hear. Shouldn't be, but that's just the way society is built these days. It's much easier when we're kids. It's much harder when we're adults. I see Meetup as the other side of that, the other kind of scale of it, in that, you know, you sign up to meet people, you don't chat online, you just get straight into it. But you walk into a crowded room and there could be 10, 20, 50, 100 people in the room, and you've got to try and find which ones you're going to talk to and introduce yourself and do everything else. And then how are you going to meet everybody who's in that room? And they're only brought together normally around one common hobby or interest. You know, it could be tech, it could be a particular sport, or it could just be that you're in the same city. For me, that's awkward in different ways. You know, I'm a very friendly person, but I hate networking events. I hate trying to go up to people and start a conversation and see if that leads anywhere. I see Foura as kind of, you know, the Goldilocks solution to both those problems, right? We bring you together in groups of 4, which is intimate enough that you do get to meet everybody, but not so intimate that that's uncomfortable or awkward. But we tell you each other's names beforehand, so you're not kind of walking up and being like, oh, hello, nice to meet you, sort of thing. And we give you a number of talking points. We tell you the different things that you have in common, and that gives you an opportunity to start the conversation or to lead the conversation in a certain way. So in terms of tech solutions, that's how I see that we're very different. And I think that's what a lot of our members have really loved, is that it is a novel solution. There's nothing really out there that's all about bringing you together in groups of 4. The other example I used is the, you know, social clubs, book clubs, sports clubs, etc., which can be great. They've worked for thousands of years, for a lot of years, but they are seeing declining memberships. I'm not entirely sure why, but I think it's partly to do with the fact that we have busy lifestyles, and it's hard to commit to an ongoing commitment like that. You know, if I were to take up playing football, for example, or soccer, as some of you may call it, you know, I'd have to go to training and a game every week, which is great if I want to play football. But if my primary objective is to meet people, then that seems like a weird way of doing it. You know, having this weekly time commitment where I've got to do something else just in order to hang out with people. I just want to go for a beer with someone at the end of the week. Why am I going to have to keep going to this thing regularly in order to do that? So we're that kind of on-demand version that allows you to meet people as and when your schedule fits. And hopefully you can then kind of arrange to meet them again as and when you're all free.
Brilliant. We have had a few more questions come in. We have a few to get through. The first that I'd like to point to you, Tam, is in and around your app. So you recently launched an app. Previously, Foura was obviously a web app. Now you've got a mobile app, differentiating between Bumble obviously being a dating app and Foura just being a mate matching app. So can you tell us a little bit about your plans to develop the app, improve the UX, as well as how the app may be better used for scalability rather than a web app?
Yeah, sure. So I think the main reason we've made a lot of changes with the mobile app. We're always going to build a mobile app, and a lot of people have been asking us for one for the last 2 years. There have been some significant changes in how Foura works as a result of that. But the reason we made those changes was off the back of feedback that we were getting from our members. So people were telling us that they wanted a bit more control over who they meet. They wanted more control over where and when they meet. And that's ultimately been the driving force behind the changes that we made. Now, I will openly say that we haven't absolutely nailed it. And, I'm willing to admit that there have definitely been some problems with the app, but we are finally bug-free now. I won't bore you with the details as to why those happened. Point is, we've learned our lessons, and we hope we making those same mistakes again. What we're finding is that it's not necessarily the perfect solution for everyone. So few of the things that we have planned are, for example, an auto swiping feature. While some members told us it was important for them to have more control, a lot of you have told us that you're not too bothered. So long as you're available at the right time, you're happy to kind of meet whoever we match you up with. So we're going to be looking at building a feature that allows you to accept any groups that you're kind of matched into. We're going to be doing more to recommend the times that you actually meet, so that we're not putting the onus on you to suggest that. So we'll be collecting more information about when you're actually available, and then going, hey, we've matched the four of you. You're normally available on Thursdays. Why don't you meet next Thursday or the following Thursday, or throw out other kind of options. And the same thing with venues. If we know that you like certain venues, we can suggest those up front as well. Just kind of trying to take some of the onus away from you, while still giving you the decision-making ability to decide whether or not you want to meet that group. I've always been a very data-driven person, and I use the data and speaking to people to help make those decisions. And so we've been collecting information about how people are using the app or not using the app, and that's ultimately what's going to lead to our ongoing improvements. We've talked about the other features, the premium side of things, where we may bring in kind of more nuanced matching, perhaps more specifically tailored matching. If the people you get matched with, you want them to have certain characteristics, certain hobbies and interests, we can bring that in, but it is going to cost a small fee. Ultimately, I have my own ideas. I want to kind of bring them out and decide and speak to our members about them as we kind of grow and as we're in a position to. But right now, the people developing the app are me and one other developer. And I'm actually not a developer, so I've been learning how to do that. The reason we need the investment is to bring on more developers so that we can improve what we've already got and build out the features that a lot of you have been recommending.
Brilliant. Thanks, Tam. Again, we have a fair few questions to get through, so I'm going to group them into different topics. Just to talk a little bit about your existing Foura members. How many pods are you hosting roughly a week? And what's the split between demographic, age, sex, that sort of stuff?
Yeah, sure. So at our peak before we launched the app, we were hosting as many as about 100 pods a week. With the problems that we've had with the app, that's now down to about 20. But I'm confident that it won't be long until it's back up there again. The demographics are really broad. We've got people as young as 18 and as old as 80. But where we're seeing that kind of core demographic is around the 25 to 40 mark. And about 70% of our members are female. I think that's partly because there's perhaps more of a stigma around blokes wanting to make friends. And so while we've got that really broad range, I come from a marketing background. I know that our best chance of success is to hone in on one or two of them and really kind of grow those before we start expanding out to everyone. It also just means that there's more matches available for our core demographic. So we'll be focusing on those expats and young social kind of elements that I mentioned before to begin with, but we're certainly not going to turn anybody away. Even now with our marketing turned off, we're still seeing about 40 people a week signing up from all different kinds of demographics. So there's always going to be a place for everyone on Foura, but that will be where our focus is until we hit a certain kind of capacity and scale.
Brilliant. And then another question on the churn rate of your partner venues.
Yeah, we've been very fortunate, actually. Most of our venues have been quite happy to maintain and to stay. I think we've lost one venue who were a little upset about people cancelling at the last minute. And then the other venues that we've lost have been because they've closed down. Literally, business wasn't good enough, or the building was demolished. There was one down in Pitt Street that has been kind of shut down. But the venues are quite happy to pay for the business. I think a lot of them are still kind of recovering post-COVID. But what the interesting feedback that I'm getting is that they actually really like being part of this. Some of them will kind of sit and see groups coming together, and they like that their venue is a spot that's becoming that social hangout.
Definitely, I can see why. As Tam mentioned, I have been on a Foura mate dates, and it was a really great experience. So highly recommend anyone that hasn't jump on the app and get involved in it. It's a lot of fun. And then we just had a question if you could repeat the numbers on the percentage of people who left a tip when that was optional.
Yeah, so of the people who were asked, we were finding that 20% of them were leaving a tip. We allowed people to put in any amount that they wanted, and we found that the average was about, I think, between $10 to $12.
Okay, brilliant. Now just moving on to a bit of goals topic, because we've got a few on them as well. So what's your vision for Foura in about 3 to 5 years? I mean, I know you said that it's going to be something where you can organize events through. How do you plan to facilitate that, as well as the opportunity to potentially take the app internationally or scale it nationally?
Yeah, I think the international opportunity is our biggest opportunity. While, like we said, there's 1 in 3 Australians feel lonely, it's not an Australian problem. We're seeing a lot of these stats across the US and Europe and across the world. In fact, the Surgeon General of the US came out earlier this year to call loneliness a public health crisis, and said it's one of his biggest priorities to fix. The numbers out of the US are startling. It's something more like 60% of Americans suffer from loneliness. And with Australian cities being a lot more transient, people are more likely to move from small town Nebraska to LA or to New York or to wherever. We think there's a real opportunity within American cities. So what I've always said is that I wanted to, within 5 years, get to 100 cities globally. The plan is for us to really nail the app, really nail the service here in Australia over the course of next year, and then have an eye on expanding into the US in 2025. Now, the US is just our first expansion point because it is one of the largest. It will allow us to generate revenue quicker. But if we can do that well, and we can learn pretty fast about how to do that, I think we'd expand into the UK, Canada, New Zealand, and other English-speaking markets very quickly. And from there on, it's really about trying to understand where we can have the most impact. People talk about places like Singapore, Kuala Lumpur, Dubai, and now Saudi Arabia becoming really high for expats, and I think that's a really big opportunity for us. But there's really no shortage of places where I think we can get to. In order to get there, though, we really do have to have the app refined. I want it to be as close to perfect as possible. It's never going to be 100% perfect, but if we know that if we can get to the point where we know if we spend X dollars on marketing, we're going to get a return on that within 3 months, 4 months, whatever that might be. When we have the confidence in our numbers and in our revenue to be able to grow and to expand, that's when we'll look to do that, and hopefully that will be something that we learn over the course of 2024.
Yeah, brilliant. And just to clarify, the tip when people leave it, and if that becomes an option later on, that goes straight to Foura?
It does, yes. It comes entirely to Foura, yeah. Honestly, we really just put that in there to see. It wasn't for us to generate revenue. Money's not been my biggest driving factor to date. It was for us to understand how much do people value the service. Who values the service? How much do they value it? And how many people value it? That was the really driving force behind it. We collected that money, yes, and went straight back into the business and to paying a couple of salaries and doing some of the other things that we need to do.
Brilliant. And then just a question on your background, whether it's in IT, and then if you have a developer in mind to hire, if you do receive the funding you need to hire.
Yeah, wow, good questions. My background is not in IT specifically. I started my career at a startup while I was still at university. I joined as the 4th employee, and that business grew to more than 80, operating across 5 countries. And I was fortunate enough to really lead the growth and really lead the charge on a number of different fronts. Marketing was one of the key ones, and kind of lead generation. But I also worked with the in-house developer that we had there to build out our completely bespoke system. But I led the international expansions as well. It was my job to identify which country we should go into next, launch the service into that, and we launched into non-English speaking countries. So I had to kind of figure out Spanish marketing and French marketing and everything else. I would, set it up, run it for a year, and then pass it on to somebody else to kind of take over that management. After that job, I ended up moving to Australia, working at a few other startups in marketing roles, and then ultimately settling down at a digital marketing agency called Web Profits, where I was the in-house marketer. So my job was to basically sell marketing to marketers, which is harder than it sounds. Marketers always think they know what they're doing, and I'll be honest with you, a lot of the time they don't. So I'd say that marketing is really my core skill, but I've ended up doing everything across my, I don't want to give away my age, but 18 years or so of 18-year career so far. Do I have somebody in mind who I'd like to hire? No, unfortunately. We've had a lot of conversations with people I've been searching for a really senior developer to come on board for almost 2 years now. Had a lot of conversations that ultimately didn't really end up going somewhere for one reason or another, sometimes just because we didn't have the money to pay them. But there's no one available right now. I would love to hear recommendations. If someone here is a developer or one of our members is a developer and wants to come on board, that would be great. What's important for me isn't so much that they have, a ton of experience. I want them to definitely have some. The important thing for me, and this is something that's shared with the developer that we currently have, is that there's a real understanding of the problem and a desire to solve it. That is ultimately our guiding light. We are a purpose-driven business, and I think that's got to be ingrained in everybody that we employ, certainly within the first 50 to 100 hires.
I am cautious of time, so I do have a few more questions that have come in. This is more so on the investment side of things. So Tam, why do you think, why would someone or why should someone invest in Foura? What do they get in return for their investment? And is there an opportunity at a later date for potential dividends?
Yeah, sure. Good question. So I think, why should somebody invest? Startups are tricky in their nature. They are risky. I believe that by acquiring 9,000 members so far with very little marketing spend, and having 6,500 of them met up already, that we've really proven that there is a market for it, that we can deliver that solution, and that there's an opportunity for revenue to be generated. That doesn't come along very often. Cassie, you see a lot of startups, you've seen a lot of pitches. Few of them can say that they've had the traction that we've had with the resources that we've had so far. I think there's a lot of startups out there that focus on fixing problems of various kinds, but I could have joined one, but honestly, I got bored of working with finance companies or another B2B SaaS platform. I wanted to do something that helped the world, something that really did make the world a friendlier place. And I think there aren't a lot of opportunities for people to be able to do that. There's a few things happening in climate tech right now, but they're all quite hard to understand, in my opinion. I do think that there are very few startups that have proven success, that are genuinely fixing a problem, and a problem that means something to the world and isn't just focused on financial returns. That being said, we do make revenue, right? I don't want to be completely altruistic. I am here to make money, and that is a driving factor for me. And I think we've shown that we can do that at a small scale, and we need the investment to do that at a larger scale. We're also helping hospitality venues who still haven't fully recovered from COVID, and there's an element there that the problem fits for them as well as it does for our members. I think, like I said, it is a global problem. I think the market has been way bigger than I expected. Cassie, you said you were surprised by the numbers. I always had a hunch that people were lonely, but I really didn't think it was as many as 1 in 3 Australians, right? You think of Australia as a really friendly place. So that did kind of make me ratchet it up a little bit when I realized, because I'm like, we have an opportunity here to do something that's good, but there is a genuinely large problem to fix. In terms of what investors get for their investment, as you mentioned at the beginning, this isn't a Kickstarter campaign. This isn't a GoFundMe campaign. We're not taking donations. You will become a shareholder in the business. So for whatever investment you put in, you will receive shares in the business. In terms of getting a return on that, as a startup, our plan is to reinvest any profits into the growth of the organization. And so there are 2 real kind of significant opportunities to earn a return on that investment. And those are that the business is acquired by another company, whether that is the likes of Bumble or Meetup or a private equity group or something else. That is an option, although I have to say that's not my primary preference. What I would rather is that we take this to a point which it's a global organization that is listed on a stock exchange. Now, that does mean that the investment is tied up for a while. I think the recommendation I hear is that if you're investing in a startup, expect it to be 5 to 10 years before you start to see a return on that. Now, if we're still going in 10 years' time, then you can be sure that our valuation is significantly higher than the 5 million that it is now. And so your return will be hopefully proportional to the amount of time that the investment has been kind of generating value. But that will be the opportunity at which it turns back into kind of cash for our investors. I think one of the things that we're looking at doing is, I mentioned the premium subscription. If any of the investors who join us in this crowdfunding campaign do use the platform, we'll offer you a premium subscription for life for free. Just something for you to be able to say that you've backed Foura, you're a friend of Foura, and we're a friend to you. We're going to back you back. Back you back. That makes sense, I think. I won't think about it too much.
And then just a question on the valuation and what kind of metrics or how you got to that point.
Yeah, it comes from kind of identifying what other startups are doing in the market. I think, like I said, we are a business that have achieved traction, which is rare. It's not something I necessarily expected we'd get to from when I first started the business. But it is where we are now. We have proven the concept. We have proven customers on both the user side and the venue side. We've done a couple of investment rounds already from friends and family and from a few angel investors. And the valuation now is kind of on that trajectory of the previous valuations that we were raising on. That's where it all comes from. We have a decent user base. We have a proven idea. We've got the assets in terms of the app and the number of people using it. That's where the valuation of $5 million comes from.
Yeah, brilliant. I did have a question here on revenue. So I know that your focus has been on building the business, acquiring users, getting primary feedback from obviously your users, and only recently have you built the app and then now turning your attention towards revenue generating. What does that look like for you at the moment? Is that something that you're focusing a little bit more clearly on, and is there opportunity for growth there?
Yeah, definitely. Look, for me, revenue is a byproduct of a successful experience for our members. If we're able to get members meeting up, they're meeting in our venues, the venues pay us money. So that's really what my focus is like, how do we make sure that the app is as easy for you to use so that you meet as many people as possible, whether that's meeting them for the first time or the second time or the third time. What you'll have seen in the app is that there's been an option to select your own venues as well. Now, that's something that we wanted to trial and see what people are using to give you the opportunity to meet wherever you want. That may be something that we start to charge for in the not too distant future, because we don't make any revenue down that path. So there are opportunities there to make revenue in that way. But as I said, if we partner with more experience-based, activity-based companies, then we can make more than the $20 per pod that we make from bars and pubs. So that it gives us an opportunity to make more revenue, on a per unit basis as well. So there are plenty of ways that we can do this, but really our focus first and foremost is how do we get from 20 pods meeting up a week to, I think we said within a year, 1,000. But if we can get that metric climbing, the revenue will come through with it. And it's only really once we're confident that that metric's climbing that we can start to focus on, all right, how do we get more dollars out of each of these transactions? Yeah.
Very strategic approach. We've got one final question. I am cautious this will be the last one. If there's any more to come through, obviously just send it to our way and we'll come across via email or answered in another platform. So there's a question here on, is there a potential to partner with businesses to maybe organize similar pods for new starters? For example, some businesses have a gap and try to find ways to put in social events for new employees across teams.
100% yes, there is an opportunity there. It's actually I've had it suggested a number of different times. There are businesses like you know, for where you kind of mentioned it there in terms of new starters, but there are businesses like Combank, which have, you know, 10,000 employees in Sydney, and they really want to be able to foster retention. And it's been proven that if you've got friends in the organization, you're more likely to stay longer. And so I think there's an opportunity for us to work with large companies to offer Foura to their employees so that they get to know other people who aren't necessarily in their team. One of our investors is the founder of an Australian startup unicorn. Doesn't want to be named publicly, so I can't say who or what they are. But he suggested that I speak to their team about doing that for their new starters. You know, again, the idea being anyone who hires people, particularly from overseas, they want to make sure that their employees settle. Because a settled employee is a happy employee and one who's more likely to stay longer and be more productive. So there are a number of opportunities to explore down that path. Right now, we haven't had the time to be able to explore those opportunities. So yes, I'd love to. If anyone has any connections to that regard, then please do let me know. Let's have a chat. It's an idea. It's one that we want to explore. It's not been proven yet, which is why I haven't mentioned it so far, but there's definitely a chance to take that B2B angle.
Thanks, Tam. I think we'll leave it there and wrap up. I know that it's 1:45. I want everyone to have the opportunity to chill before they actually go back to work. So just quickly in terms of next steps, the Foura's Raise will be opening privately for those who have expressed interest next week. Thursday next week is our target date. You'll receive an email with a link. If you follow that link, you'll be able to invest and secure your shares. This is an opportunity for those who have been supporters from day one of TAMS and of Foura's and who have expressed their interest to basically get first dibs on securing their shares before we take it to the public. So you will receive instructions via email. In the meantime, do hop on Foura if you haven't used it already. It's a really fun experience and I highly recommend it. If you're going to be an investor, no better way to know about the platform than to experience it yourself. Any final comments, Tam?
No, just look, thank you all so much. You know, we've had a lot of interest early doors, and part of it kind of blew me away. To be honest, I was, you know, there's always a part of you that's worried that it's not going to work out. I don't know if this is something you've heard from others, Cassie, but I've really been touched by how many people do want to get behind this, and I'm grateful for it. Grateful for you taking the time to listen today, and yeah, hopefully we can all build a friendlier world together.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks, Tam, for your time, and we'll speak soon.
Thanks for moderating, Cassie. Lovely to meet you all. Thank you.
Bye.